Rain poured relentlessly, soaking the marble steps of St. James Hospital until they gleamed like glass beneath the gray sky. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt and despair. Richard Hallen stood motionless, his expensive coat clinging to his shoulders, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. The great Richard Hallen, millionaire industrialist, man of logic, power, and control, now looked like a ghost, stripped of everything except pain. Beside him sat his 12-year-old daughter, Emily, her small figure dwarfed by the wheelchair. Her skin was pale, her legs lifeless beneath a blanket, and her eyes no longer sparkled the way they used to when she danced. For months, she had been to the best hospitals, the best doctors, flown across oceans in private jets searching for cures. Each specialist had shaken their head, voices wrapped in pity and helplessness. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Maybe it's time to go home." The words hit him harder than the rain. He forced a smile, though it cracked under the weight of it all. "We're not giving up yet, sweetheart." But deep down he knew. Hope was slipping away. He knelt to adjust her blanket, trying to hide the tears that burned in his eyes. That's when he heard it. A faint voice, soft yet certain, coming from behind. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." Richard turned sharply, his jaw tightening. A boy stood there in the rain, barefoot, clothes torn, hair plastered to his forehead. His skin was smeared with dirt, but his eyes burned with an odd, unwavering confidence. He couldn't have been older than 15. His hands were trembling from the cold, yet he didn't step back when Richard glared at him. "What did you just say?" Richard asked, his voice low and sharp, half in disbelief, half in anger. "I said I can make your daughter walk again." The boy's tone didn't waver. He spoke not with arrogance, but with conviction, as though the words were truth carved into his soul. Emily looked up, startled. The boy's gaze met hers for an instant, and something passed between them. A silent understanding, a flicker of faith. Richard exhaled, shaking his head. "You're just a beggar," he muttered. "You have no idea what you're talking about." But the boy took a step forward, rain dripping from his chin. "I know you've tried everything, sir. The doctors, the treatments, all of it. I know how it feels when everyone says impossible. But I'm asking you to trust me, just once." "Trust you?" Richard's voice broke with disbelief. "You think I'd hand my daughter to a street boy with no medical training? Do you have any idea who I am?" The boy's expression didn't change. "It doesn't matter who you are," he said quietly. "It matters that she still can be healed." For a long moment the world fell silent except for the rain. Emily's fingers gripped the armrest of her chair. "Dad, maybe we should listen," she said softly. Richard's heart clenched. He looked at her frail hands, her trembling smile, the spark of life that had just returned to her face. Against every instinct, against logic and pride, he nodded once, curtly. "Fine," he said. "You get one chance." The boy's eyes lit with gratitude, and without another word he turned, motioning for them to follow him down the dark street, away from the shining hospital and into the narrow, broken alleys where miracles didn't belong, but sometimes happened anyway. The boy led them through the rain-soaked streets, weaving between alleys so narrow that even the headlights of Richard's car couldn't pierce their darkness. The city's glittering skyline faded behind them, replaced by flickering bulbs and the distant wail of sirens. Emily's wheelchair bumped over uneven stones, the sound echoing softly through the wet night. Richard followed close, every instinct screaming that this was madness. He had walked boardrooms worth billions, but never alleys where hope smelled of rot and desperation. Yet something in the boy's steady pace, his quiet confidence, kept him from turning back. Finally, the boy stopped in front of a building so small and worn it looked as though a single gust of wind might tear it down. A faint light leaked from a window smeared with grime. He pushed open the door, and they stepped into a single room, bare but strangely warm. The walls were lined with jars of dried herbs, old books stacked in precarious towers, and strange symbols drawn in chalk across the floor. A single candle flickered on a wooden table, casting long, trembling shadows across the boy's face. Richard's jaw tightened. "This is your clinic." His voice was sharp, filled with disbelief and restrained fury. "You brought us to this?" The boy didn't answer. He kneeled beside a small chest at the foot of the table, unlocking it with a rusted key. Inside were rolled-up papers, small glass vials filled with liquids that shimmered faintly even in the dim light, and a wooden pendant carved with what looked like ancient markings. He handled them with trembling reverence, not fear. "She'll need to sit still," he said softly, turning to Emily. Emily nodded. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you going to do?" "I'll help your legs remember," he replied, and though the words made no sense, they carried a strange comfort. Richard moved closer, his tone harsh. "Listen, boy, if you hurt her—" The boy cut him off gently, his eyes lifting. "I would never." Something in the way he said it, quiet, broken, but pure, stilled Richard's anger. He stood frozen, torn between skepticism and something he hadn't felt in years, faith in something unseen. The boy placed the pendant around Emily's neck. Then he drew a deep breath, closing his eyes. His lips moved, whispering sounds that weren't any language Richard knew, soft, rhythmic, like a song hummed in another world. The air seemed to thicken, humming faintly. The candle's flame flared blue for a heartbeat, casting the boy's face in an otherworldly glow. His hands hovered above Emily's knees, shaking from exhaustion, and then he touched her. Emily gasped. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in 2 years she felt it. Heat, alive and pulsing beneath her skin. The dull emptiness that had lived in her legs flickered with warmth, with life. "Dad," she breathed, tears filling her eyes. "I can feel them." Richard's throat closed. He stepped forward, disbelief breaking into 1,000 pieces. "What did you— how—" The boy didn't answer. His face had gone pale, his breath shallow. He seemed to pour every ounce of himself into the touch, his shoulders trembling, his lips moving faster as the candlelight danced wildly. Then, suddenly, the glow faded, the warmth subsided, and he slumped forward, collapsing onto the cold floor. Emily screamed, "No!" Richard rushed forward, catching the boy's frail body before it hit the ground. His chest rose and fell weakly. He was alive, but barely, and when Richard looked up again, his heart nearly stopped. Emily was standing. Her legs were trembling, but she was upright, tears streaming down her cheeks. Richard froze where he knelt, the boy's weight in his arms, the impossible standing before him. The rain outside had quieted, but inside it felt as though thunder had struck the world still. The boy awoke slowly, his body aching as though he'd been hit by a storm. The air around him was warm, filled with the faint scent of wood polish and roses. When his eyes opened, he didn't recognize where he was. Soft, golden light spilled through velvet curtains and the furniture gleamed with quiet luxury. He blinked, disoriented, trying to sit up. A thick blanket covered him, and beneath it, the couch was softer than anything he had ever slept on. For a second, he thought he was dreaming. Then he heard a voice, gentle, trembling. "You're awake." Emily stood before him, not in her wheelchair but on her feet. She wore a pale blue dress and no longer looked like the fragile, hollow girl he had met in the rain. Her eyes shone with life, and when she smiled, it was the kind of smile that broke silence like sunlight through clouds. The boy's lips parted in disbelief. "You're walking." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Because of you." The boy turned his gaze downward. His hands trembled as he whispered, "I didn't think it would work." "Not completely." "It did," she said softly, taking a careful step closer. "You saved me." Before he could respond, the heavy door opened and Richard Hallen entered. Gone was the man of iron and money who had once barked orders and measured worth by zeros. He looked different, human, humbled, grateful. He walked slowly toward the boy, his voice low. "You saved my daughter." "I have no words for that." The boy swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I didn't do it alone," he murmured. "My sister taught me before she passed. She had the same gift. When I was hurt once, she healed me. I spent years trying to understand how. I never thought I'd use it again." His voice broke and the truth hung in the quiet air. This wasn't a trick or luck. It was sacrifice, born from love and loss. Richard's eyes softened. He knelt beside the couch, placing a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "You'll never go hungry again," he said firmly. No more sleeping in the cold. You're part of this family now, if you'll accept it." The boy's eyes widened, unsure how to answer. He had never been offered kindness without condition, never known what it felt like to belong anywhere. He looked at Emily, who nodded with a trembling smile. "You gave me back my life," she whispered. "Let us give you one too." For a long moment he couldn't speak. His vision blurred with tears. All he could do was nod, his lips trembling. Richard stood, turning to the window where the storm had cleared. "It's strange," he murmured. "For years I thought money could fix anything. But it took a boy with nothing to give me back everything." Outside, the sun was breaking through the clouds, casting golden light across the mansion's garden. Emily walked toward the window, her bare feet pressing into the rug, steady and strong. The boy watched her in silent wonder, still half afraid it was a dream. She turned, beaming, and reached for his hand. "Come see," she said. "It's beautiful outside." He hesitated, then rose slowly, his legs weak but steady enough to follow. Together they stepped toward the light. Two souls bound not by wealth or blood, but by the miracle of faith and the simple, unexplainable power of believing in what others had long forgotten. Hope.